Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of Storefront Strategies. Now, I'm delighted today to actually have a special guest. Don is joining me from Bristol, which is pretty much the other end of the UK from where I am. So, Don, thank you so much for joining me today. What I would like you to do to start off with is tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
The business was actually founded almost 44 years ago, obviously not by myself. It was by Mike and Luce Abrahams. Luce originally came from the Netherlands, and Mike was British but was working in the Netherlands. They were both working for the European Space Agency. And Mike, unfortunately, it was quite a stressful job, and Mike had some poor health. So Luce, and you have to realize this was 44 years ago, so eating certain types of food, certain diet, like a macrobiotic diet, for example, was unheard of. No one really knew too much about that. But Luce essentially helped nurse Mike back to health, and they both realized they wanted to get out of the stressful space agency job. They were looking to return back to the UK, and as fate would have it, there was a little shop here in Bristol that they ended up buying, and it's now Wild Oats is the oldest independent retail health food shop in the UK, in Bristol. And so Mike's been trying to retire for about 10 years now. I've been working there for I think going on 16 years now. And me and three of my colleagues are slowly taking over the business so Mike can finally step down. So while I didn't found the business, I've been working there for quite a long time now. And if you take all of my coworkers and myself's work experience at Wild Oats, it adds up to about 50 years of experience. So hopefully Mike's leaving it in good hands now.
I love the idea that he keeps trying to retire but not quite getting there. So that would be what, 1980 that he opened the shop?
I think it was, mid-1980s, which is funny because I was just getting out of school. So when he started the business,
it's if you say 1980, it feels like it was about 5 years ago.
For me, it does as well. Especially now that the 80s seem to be popular again.
Oh, there's some of the 80s I'm definitely going to leave behind, though. So speaking of challenges, what's some of the challenges that they faced when they first opened the business? It must have been something really different if it's one of the first ones of its kind.
It was. I think they were trying to sell product that most people weren't familiar with, but also it was hard to supply some of the products. Mike told stories about having to go back to mainland Europe to buy some of the food to bring back to England, to Bristol to sell. So just supplying some of the food that they wanted to sell and then introducing that to people. But also back then, the shop was considerably smaller. They had one part of a building, so they did have a lot of space. So they didn't have a lot of experience running a shop. They had a very small shop, and they were stocking products that were hard to find and selling to customers who weren't very familiar with it. So it took a little while to get started, but I think they stuck with it. They persevered. They were able to buy sections of other buildings next to them. So over time, they did grow a little bit. People were becoming more interested in eating healthier diet. And thankfully, they persevered. They did open up a little restaurant to try to show people what you could make with these ingredients. And unfortunately, I think they were too far ahead of their time with the restaurant, and they ended up closing that. But they did keep the shop, and the shop's in the same place that it was when they first opened.
Restaurants are notoriously difficult businesses, notoriously difficult. There's like a break-even point that if you're anything less than 50 covers, it's not going to work. So small restaurants are beautiful, but not viable. But what a fantastic idea to say, well, we can showcase the product and show what you can do with it as well.
Well, I think it was just a way of introducing new foods, the new types of foods to people. And if you can make it and serve it and it tasted good, then they're more likely to try to do it themselves. I think some of the foods back then probably seemed quite foreign. I mean, now we're talking like rice cakes and soy milk, for example. But I think if you think about 20 years ago, no one really knew anything about that.
It's very true. If you sort of consider people's diets before that, I know pasta isn't a health food, but I don't think I ate pasta until I was in my 20s because it just wasn't something that was in where I lived. So the idea of whole grains or quinoa or some of the things that we take for granted today really would have been completely foreign to the audience that you had at the time.
Quinoa, acai berries, that sort of stuff. No one really knew anything about that.
So Can you talk us through a typical day for running the business or your part of the business and some of the unique aspects of managing location-based business rather than it being an online entity?
Well, we start quite early because there's a local bakery and we get fresh bread delivered every day except for on Sundays. So the staff are there first thing in the morning, putting bread out on display. And we have quite a loyal following. So there's people that come every day or every few days to get their fresh bread. So the staff are there early in the morning getting things set up. One of the things that we started doing probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago was selling fresh coffees and teas as well. So we have to get the coffee machine ready. We have to get the bread out on the shelf and we open at 9 o'clock. By about that time, you have an after school run kind of rush. I think people now know that we have coffees and pastries or fresh bread. So we get a little bit busy in the morning. We get deliveries throughout the day. And because we're bigger than we were when Mike first opened, but it still feels like a very small space. It's not like one of the big chain supermarkets where they have a huge stock room and they have aisles big enough to bring the stock in. So throughout the day, we're getting deliveries, putting stock out. The phone's ringing with people making requests. So they can call in and either ask for bread the next day, a specific bread, have it sliced. People asking if we have certain products that are hard to find. Being a Whole Foods store, we have sometimes ingredients or products that aren't mainstream yet. So people call first before they just drive over. We have the department managers placing orders. It's almost like a beehive of activity and everyone has their role to play. And can be quite busy, as you can imagine, especially in a small space when you have all the people and customers trying to maneuver. You said one of the challenges of having a bricks and mortar space versus maybe a web business. So the parking can be quite challenging. I think all over the UK, parking rules have changed and prices have gone up and a lot of places have permit parking now. So as a few years ago, our street, anybody could park there. And then they brought in the parking meters and the residential schemes. So parking is quite difficult now. So that's why a lot of people call first before they drive over because parking's difficult. But also the building's quite old. And one thing that we learned while we're taking over the business from Mike is there's lots of maintenance that needs to be done or repairs that need to be done. But in addition to that, you get inspected, you have to pay a cleaner now. There's security with shopliftings on the increase, I think, over the whole country. So there's all these different facets that you have to factor in when you're trying to make money, sell food to make money. And it seems to go out very quickly for all the overhead of having an actual brick and mortar business. So I'd never really thought too much about that until I knew I was going to have this conversation with you. It's like, oh, we do pay a lot to have an actual building. So security, parking, maintenance, health and safety, making sure the staff are comfortable. So we have to keep it as cool as we can in the summer, try to keep it warm in the winter. And there's a lot to have an actual building. So I was also sort of thinking, if you have a web-based business, just think of how much you save on your overheads versus having a bricks and mortar building. But that's not to say I would do it differently. It's just, it made me stop and think, wow, it's expensive.
The thing with a website is you can't smell the bread or the coffee. So what you have is an experience that people come into your shop. It's a beautiful building. I've seen photographs of it. It's absolutely stunning building. It's got that age. It's got that sort of provenance of the time that it's been there. And then, like say, because of the bread and the coffee and the tea and the different things, it must have a smell about it. There's something that you can't buy and something you can't experience on the web. And it's that tactile, tangible product that you have that needs to be in a physical space.
And one of the things that separates us from some of our competitors is we have trained advisors to give advice on the supplement section or the natural remedies. So obviously you could do that on the online, I guess, or over the phone, but sometimes it's nice to go in and have a face-to-face conversation and get free advice from a trained advisor. So that's one thing that's kind of separates us from some of our competitors. But also, I mean, we have a lot of loyal customers who've been coming for a very long time. And you're right, it is a nice experience and you get to recognize people. And it's almost part of the daily activity is for them to come into our shop. They recognize the staff that's going to be waiting on them. You have a friendly conversation. And that's not something you can do online.
Yeah, the like, know, and trust is such a vital part of business. And especially when, like you say, something like supplements, there are so many to choose from. And it's really difficult to say, well, actually, what's going to work for me? So if you have somebody that you can trust, that you can go in and say, Don, this is going on. What do you recommend? And you can say, well, actually, this is what we have and this is what it
Exactly.
does. It means a lot. So you become the trusted advisor, and that's really important with what you're doing.
Exactly. I think because some of our advisors have been there for quite a while now, there's people that come in and they want to see that specific advisor.
And that recommendation will go on as well.
And like you said,
Somebody would then say, well, I went to see such a body, and bring them in too.
exactly. And it's almost like going to a GP that you've been going to for a long time. You can talk to them maybe a bit more openly about something that's maybe personal. But if you've seen the advisor before or you recognize them, then you're more than likely to open up a little bit. And it's completely free advice. And we emphasize that we're not pushy about sales. We want to actually help our customers and we want them to be satisfied because hopefully they'll come back then. So you're more than welcome to go in and get free advice. They'll recommend some supplements or something that might be helpful. Hopefully it works. We've actually given free samples before. So here's a free sample, try it, see how you get on with it. If it works, great, come back and you can get the bottle.
I think that's brilliant. I mean, it's quite clear that the customer service is really important to you.
Because that's what differentiates us, I think, from some of the really big supermarkets where I think sometimes, and I've noticed over the years, customer service seems to have gone downhill a lot for a lot of businesses. And me, I'm old school. I want people to acknowledge me. I want people to make eye contact. I don't want them just to be, I've actually had at some of the bigger supermarkets, they were on their phone while scanning my stuff through. Or the only part of the conversation they would have is to tell me how much money I owed them. So in our shop, I sit in on the interviews being head of HR. And one of the first things we talk about is how important customer service is. And they kind of need to show us in the interview and with their work experience that they can do that. Because there's a lot of competition in general. So one way that we can be above our competitors is to provide really good customer service. So acknowledge people, make eye contact, say hello, and say it sincerely. It's easy to say, have a nice day, but I mean, we want to mean it as well.
So it's clear that your business is really quite unique and very special. How are you able to convey that? You know, what are the marketing strategies that you use and what have you found effective?
It's funny, when I first started, and I'm showing my age a bit, like I have a 14-year-old daughter and I try to explain life without social media, without the internet even. You were asking about some of the challenges that Mike and Luz faced in the early days. Imagine having no internet to ask. So if I have a question or a query, the first thing I do is go on the internet and search, try to find answers, look at other businesses, look at like whatever. So 20, 30 years ago, they didn't have that. They had to figure it out themselves. You might have to write a letter or call someone. So nowadays I can just go online and do the research. We do have an online presence now. I remember just a few years ago, if you did like a Google search, we hardly came up at all. So one of the things our former manager did was hire someone to help with marketing. We're on Instagram now. We're on Facebook. We have an online presence. If you do a Google search now, we come up pretty high on the list. One of the things we do is we have a loyalty scheme. So obviously we need to get permission from people to get their details, but then we can email them and let them know about special offers. We also do, with some of the local businesses near us, we do an artisan outdoor market a couple times a year. So we just keep people up to date as what we're doing, when they can get a loyalty day discount. We don't bombard them with lots of adverts or sales information. We try to keep it relevant because so many people get so much emails nowadays. We try to keep it relevant. Our marketing person is still with us. She's one of the directors now as well. And it's nice because I'm kind of old school. So I don't put a lot of emphasis on Instagram or Facebook. But if you just walk outside and just look around, you can see everyone's on their phone. And that's how people, and a lot of young people, how they communicate, how they look for businesses, how they're looking for something. So I'm glad we have an online presence. I'm just glad I don't really have to do a lot of the work.
I think it's an important thing to sort of acknowledge the fact that we may have our preferences, but it's doing the right thing for the
Luckily,
customer. And if you are getting the message right for the customer, you have to meet them where they're at. And if they're on Instagram, then that's where you
exactly.
need to be.
I think when our marketing manager was first hired, some of this older staff or staff had been there for a long time, queried whether we really needed that. And I said, well, I'm not going to look for businesses online or for Instagram, or I'm not going to follow people per se. But I said, there's enough people doing it that we need to have an online presence, or we're going to be missing a lot of people.
Yeah. So I suppose that the change into to being word of mouth or papers or letters or phone calls through to now being on social media, it's just one of the ways you've had to adapt to the changing market conditions. Have you seen consumer behavior changing as well?
I think people are definitely pickier. And I don't want to say picky in a negative way, what's a more positive word? They're more conscientious consumers. So I think people, they definitely look for value. I think impulse shopping isn't what it used to be. I think people plan a lot more. They plan their meals. I don't think they just go into a shop just to shop now. I think they go in for a specific reason. But also, like with the coffee, I think I love coffee now. 10 years ago, I never hardly drank it, but now I love coffees. And if I go to the supermarket and they're selling fresh barista made coffees, I'm probably going to buy one. But also, there's a lot more cafes around where we are. And so one of the things we had to do was we had to make a bit more space because we were getting a bit too crowded. And that was something we learned during COVID was our small shop was very crowded and it was hard for people to navigate comfortably. So we reduced some of our shelves, we reduced some of the stock, and we actually made a little seating area. It's only a couple tables, but it's very popular. I think people, they either know about us and come in and have a nice coffee, or while they're shopping or after shopping, they'll do their shopping and have a coffee. And it was just a little thing like that that we did that was really helpful. We also wanted to be a more kind of a whole shop. So we started selling fresh fruit and veg. It's just little things like that that were kind of new for us, but we needed to get more customers in. We noticed the footfall was drastically going downhill, especially after COVID. But we also started trying to cater to that market that we were missing. So we started doing a delivery service and click and collect. So it's just little things like that that were kind of new for the business. Other people were doing it, but we had never done it. So we're like, we need to, like you said a minute ago, we need to cater to the customers who want this. And we're doing it and it's working out, thankfully.
It sounds like you understand what is the core elements of the business and what makes it special. But actually, as an organization, you're not scared to embrace the new things that you need to do to add to that. So things like a click and collect service and a delivery service is really forward thinking that you wouldn't necessarily expect from somewhere that feels like quite a traditional shop.
Yeah, that's a good word, traditional. But I think COVID was an eye opener for everyone, especially small independent businesses. We're not on the high street. We're just a little bit off the high street, but you can walk down the high street. I take the train a lot. And so many businesses didn't survive or aren't surviving because they probably weren't able to adapt. And we realized that we had to adapt. And because we're not a niche market necessarily anymore, I mean, lots of people, you can go around the corner to Tesco and buy vegan or vegetarian items. It's mainstream now. So we've had to adapt to survive. And while COVID was a terrible thing, in a lot of ways, it kind of forced us to adapt and change. And thankfully we did survive and we came out a bit stronger, I think. Not that I would want to do it again, though.
I think COVID really sorted like the wheat from the chaff with a lot of businesses, that it was the ones that sort of hung in there and could think differently and behave differently. And they had an agility in the business that meant that they actually made it through it. I know it was difficult for my
I
business.
can imagine. It was a very, very stressful time. And while we were going through it, especially being involved in the HR and health and safety at Wild Oats, it was very stressful because the government was changing the guidelines. Some of the staff didn't feel we were doing enough. Some staff and customers felt we were doing too much or not enough. And it was a very difficult juggling act to try to do the best thing. And obviously we wanted to keep our staff and customers safe and healthy, but also we needed to survive as a business. I mean, we did everything that we were expected to do, but looking back, it was a very difficult time, and I'm glad it's in the past.
Me too. So your business is 44 years in. Mike's aiming at retiring, possibly, eventually, working on it. What holds the future?
We want to keep doing what we're doing. We want to keep to our values. That was one thing that I think the four of us, the four directors, we're all in agreement on, is we want to keep doing what we're good at. We want to keep doing what we're doing, but maintain our values. A couple of years ago, we did have a manager that tried to help us grow, and we looked at other sites. We gave it a go at one place. I don't know if you're familiar with St. Nick's Market. So we opened up a little unit at St. Nick's Market, and it was fun and exciting, but it also kind of took away from what we were doing at our Redland shop. And I felt like we were spreading ourselves maybe a bit too thin, trying to do too much. So the four of us agreed we need to focus on what we're doing, focus on what we're good at, and we must be doing something right. We've lasted 44 years. Two of my coworkers that are also directors have been working there for a very long time. And my daughter recently started working on Sundays. So hopefully the next generation will keep it in the family and we'll still be around for another 44 years.
Do you know, I think you probably
I hope
will
so.
be. So you've come into this and it's gradually becoming your business. It's not where you've started out. But when you consider people that are coming in to run brick and mortar businesses now, what advice would you give to them?
Know your market, do your research. I think some people might have a dream that I'm going to open a shop and I'm going to sell things and it's going to be wonderful. And I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but I think the reality, especially at this time period, is it's very competitive. It's very challenging. So just do your research. If you're going to get a brick and mortar building, it would be good to have know some good insurance people, know some good builders, take a look at what's around you and see what they're doing that's successful or not successful, what you like and don't like. I would just say the main thing is do your research. It would be nice if we could all just open a shop and be successful and happy. But I think the reality is it is hard work and you have to know what you're doing.
That is so true. People have this idyllic concept of I'm going to open a shop and people will come in and it'll be rainbows and moonbeams. And actually it's really hard work. You end up meeting some of the strangest people on the planet and have the most peculiar conversations in the day. And people can be rude and not think anything about it, but you have to just get over it, get on and do it again tomorrow.
Exactly. You're saying everything that probably was going through my head and I didn't want to say out loud. And for some reason, I probably would have worked for Mike sooner had I known about him. But unfortunately, I went to one of his competitors about a mile down the road, simply because I didn't know about Wild Oats or Mike and Luce's business. There is something to be said about health food stores. They do attract a certain kind of person sometimes, and it can be challenging. And I think in general, a lot of customers, unfortunately, have sort of a sense of entitlement nowadays. And it's not just us, because I see it in other shops. They'll have the signs, please treat our staff with respect. And unfortunately, we had to put up a similar sign because we just had so many rude customers. And if you're dealing that face to face on a regular basis, it does get wearing and tiring and it just wears you out. I'm a bit fortunate because I don't work always in a customer facing role. but I do empathize with my teammates who have to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. So one of them was complaining once, and we made a nice little sign about treating our staff with respect, and we're here to help you. It's just unfortunate that that sort of sign is more common now.
It's very true. So what's the number one thing that you wished you knew starting out that you know now?
We had some really good years, and I would try to save a bit of money here and there. I just wish I had saved a bit more. I think one of the things that helped us with COVID was even before I had the role that I did, Mike even would put aside money for a rainy day. So when I kind of started taking over more of the responsibilities, I would just put a little money aside on a regular basis during the good times. I wish I had saved a bit more money. Now that we're in charge of the building, it just seems like we had to do some wiring recently. We had some plumbing issues. And it's just, you don't really want to take that out of your cash flow to pay for it. But if you take a little bit of money and set aside just every month, then it's not such a huge shock when you have something unexpected happen.
I've heard other entrepreneurs refer to it as a war chest.
Just save some money for a rainy day.
So where can our listeners find and follow you?
If they're in Bristol, you're more than welcome to visit us. We're in Lower Redland Road, just off of White Ladies Road, on the outskirts of Clifton. If you're online, you can follow us at Wild Oats Bristol on Instagram and Facebook.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for taking the time to have a conversation today. It's been lovely
You as
to
well.
meet
Thank you very much.